Ahoy! From what we know so far, acid resistance will likely play an important role in the upcoming Sandworm fight. This is interesting because this patch comes with a ton of changes to acid resistance and ways to counter acid. There are a lot of methods in the game that worked for a long time that no longer work, some others work differently, some recipes have been changed, and we are also getting some new gear. So let's have a look into what has been changed. The first thing that has been nerfed, or fixed rather, is corruption resistance. Corruption resistance used to work as a weaker form of acid resistance that didn't lower the damage or anything or the tick rate, but simply gave you more acid resist to work with, and that no longer works. It no longer applies to your acid resistance at all, which is good because otherwise decent gear for the Sandworm would have required you to have Beast Ward plus corruption resistance plus a third good perk. Without this effect affecting acid, the main things that we want on our armor, for example, would be Beast Ward plus weapon perks or plus refreshing, since elemental aversion cannot be crafted in combination with Beast Ward. But this is not the only nerf. Purifying Toast has been hit as well. With the Regeneration Potion and Purifying Toast, you could previously cleanse the acid burn effect off you if you had stood in acid for too long and gotten to 0 resistance. That is no longer possible, which will also make things like acid chest farms a fair bit more annoying. Because if you actually end up getting acid burn, then you will not be able to teleport away for quite a while, so you would have to have something else to counter this. This something else exists, but it's not cheap, and that is acid tincture. In fact, it is currently so expensive to craft that if you are going for acid chests, you're probably better off just suiciding instead of actually using these, because it's just not worth it. Right now, crafting one of these costs 20 cactus flesh, 5 aloe gel, 5 sulfur, and 5 charged sand. What you get in return is an acid tincture that provides you with 20 more points of acid resistance for 300 seconds and also removes acid burn. The version on the PTR is actually a fair bit different. The recipe has been changed quite drastically. Now it requires 25 aloe gel, 25 cactus flesh, but only 3 sulfur chunk, not actual sulfur. There's also no more charged sand as a requirement, but tier 5 medicinal reagents instead, which is life moth eyes primarily, and earth reagents. Now, I always give out early trading tips on my Patreon, so my patrons already knew about this a few days ago, and they were able to stock up on the resources here, especially the life moth eyes, which will probably go up in price quite a fair bit. If you also want to get those super early trading tips, then consider supporting me there. But if you're watching this video early, then you still have a good chance to get these resources at least at a more reasonable price, because I would imagine that over time they won't get much cheaper. In general, however, I think this recipe is a lot more reasonable than the previous one, because now the more easy to farm resources are required in larger quantities, whereas the rarer ones are required much less, and you have a tier 5 reagent in there, like in any other high tier potion. There is, however, a very significant difference with this new acid tincture, and that is that it no longer provides you with extra acid resistance. It simply removes the acid burn affliction. The big question, therefore, is how important this is going to be for the Sandworm, because if the Sandworm only deals acid damage and doesn't consistently apply acid burn to you and doesn't go through your resistance entirely, then obviously it won't have much of an effect. It depends a lot on how the damage is scaled against the speed it takes your resistance down with. But that's ultimately something we'll have to test to find out. Once the Sandworm is on PTR, I will of course test that and let you know, so if you haven't yet, consider subscribing and clicking the bell so you can see that when it comes out. But of course, there is another way to deal with acid in the game, and that is chitin paddings. These actually get a little bit of a buff, which maybe explains the nerf to the acid tincture. The acid resistance was increased from 10 to 12. The resistance decreases 15% slower, just as before. The recipes are also unchanged, so these will definitely be a core part of gearing for the Sandworm fight. And the game does a little bit of handholding here. The first thing is something that Mixologic discovered, which is that the Season Pass actually contains some chitin padding and chitin plates. This, however, is only available on the paid track, where you get 2 boxes of chitin supplies. Effectively, this is just saving you some gold, though you can easily craft these yourself, so you don't really have to worry about this. It's also by far not the only way to get acid resistance. Another way is through the Questline. I've played through the Questline as far as it's available at the moment, and I will talk about that more in the coming days, but what I can tell you right now is that you get a whole set of Beast Ward gear with refreshing and a third perk and full constitution, and all of them have chitin paddings pre-slotted. So if you use any of these pieces, you actually don't need to get the padding for that. Now, the set is interesting, because this entire set is medium, and all of it is full con, and all of the pieces have different perks. The helm comes with vigor, the chest piece comes with indestructible, the gloves come with invigorated, the pants come with shirking energy, and the boots come with freedom. I will say this, unless the devourer has some secret mechanic that requires us to have indestructible, or they think that we're gonna wipe so many times that we need indestructible, I think this is one of the game designers trying to teach us that there are more than one way to build light armor. Because realistically, the worst piece in this set is the medium chest, which you wouldn't want to use because it is indestructible. And the best piece in the set is the leg piece, which has refreshing beast ward and shirking energy, which is a great combination. If you choose to pick the legs, then you can combine that with any of the other medium pieces. You combine it with the helm, with the gloves, or with the boots, and kind of choose the additional perk that you like. If you want to have invigorated, if you want to have vigor, or if you want to have freedom. That would put you at 55 con, which I would suspect you will probably need for this fight, and this will allow you to still slot 3 light pieces that you can craft yourself with damaging perks, with weapon perks and whatnot. So you'd get some very good pieces in preparation for the fight, and I really like the way they've set this up. Obviously, if you're running a medium loadout, you kind of have to toy around with these pieces a little bit as well, and if you're running heavy, well, you're kind of out of luck here. There's a beast ward shield from the questline, but I would argue that the perks on it are not particularly good. But on the other hand, you get quite a nice tank ring for general use, so there's that. Also, you get a Beastbane sword with keenly jagged and trenchant strikes. Not really ideal for most builds, but there may be the occasional outlier that can actually make good use of this, though I don't think it would exactly be the best when usually you're mostly using light attacks. There's also some other gear from the questline that I'll link here, but that's unrelated to any beast things. There is, however, one more thing that was changed. You may remember the Chitin Armor sets. I talked about them a long time ago, and I said they were basically completely useless because it's just crafting an armor piece that has a chitin padding slotted in, but requires you to use a chitin padding and a chitin plate to craft it, and doesn't come with any other additional benefits over any other craft, so you are better off just crafting an Ori armor and then putting the chitin padding in there yourself, or whatever weight of armor you want, because there was just no benefit to actually crafting this armor. This has changed a little bit now. The chitin sets still require the same resources to craft, but now they have an additional perk, and that is Beast Ward. So they still come with a padding slotted in, but they also have Beast Ward guaranteed now. The rest of the perks are still random, and you can technically roll one of them, but the problem is if you do that, then you cannot confirm the attribute as far as I'm aware. So effectively you still end up either gambling for the attributes or you gamble for the perks entirely and just roll for something random. So as far as I can tell, they're still not particularly good because it would still be a fairly expensive gamble overall if you want to actually try and get something good out of it. If you're after a specific perk combination, I would much rather use a golden scarab with timeless shards and just choose my attribute, use my beast ward perk and the other perk that I want and hope that maybe I'll get a third one on top of that, but that usually doesn't even matter that much. Keep in mind though that Beast Ward currently doesn't have a native drop place like Beastbane does. This is another trading tip that I gave on Patreon, getting a few Beast Ward resources early because now they're going to be very difficult to get over time. Once the initial supply runs out, these will exclusively come from aptitude caches for skinning and armoring, and apparently also from breach caches now. So if you're late to the party and vials of wolf essence are too expensive, then that may be a reason to opt for kiting gear instead, where you at least don't have to pay for the Beast Ward. But these are not nearly all of the major changes that are happening with this patch. I already talked about the new weapon and some changes to gear that I will link right here, but there's even more to come and we'll talk about that in the next days. If you'd like to see that, consider subscribing and clicking the bell. Also, Sandworm raid and more Diablo stuff coming soon. Thanks to my patrons for supporting this video, and thank you for watching. Duke Sloth, out.